Oh, okay.
That's all I was going to say.
I'll shrink down.
Push that, maybe. Am I good there for the camera?
Yeah, Mark, you're good.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. We have very active lifestyles. It's not all wandering the countryside aimlessly or scaring passing motorists. And we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
Hey, happy Wednesday, everybody. You're watching Still Toking with. My name is Leo, and monkey behind the keyboard here. We have an awesome show scheduled for you, as always. And Benjamin.
Yo, dude, I'm super psyched. I know we're an hour early tonight, folks, but listen, trust me, we had to do this. Our amazing guest is coming to us from the UK. It's midnight over there. And yeah, I just can't wait to get into it and chat with this gentleman.
Awesome. Same here. Jar Jar.
Guys, thank you so much for letting me be on tonight. This is amazing. This is an awesome episode. Thank God Jeff's not doing well. That's a joke.
And showing up late as usual, Rico and Eric. Hey, how's it going?
Guys, I'm doing real well. Rico also does not take care of himself, so
Great to have you. Great to have
actually
you.
he's taking care of himself. That's why he can't be here. So.
Well, we don't want to know about his personal stuff.
Fuck all y'all.
Benjamin, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, actually I do. So this gentleman has done everything. And when I say he's done everything, I mean he's done everything. From serving in his country's military to voice acting to producing to being an author and a singer, and holy shit, his resume is like some people's rap sheets. That was a dig for Rico. But anyway, let's welcome Mark Ryan.
Yeah.
Gentlemen. What an introduction. How are we all?
Much better now.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah, doing well, doing well.
You
Thank
forgot
you so
to
much
add
for joining
Carnegie
us.
Hall. He's even made
Carnegie
Carnegie
Hall with
Hall.
Monty
I
Python.
was
Oh
going
my-
to bring that up.
I'm just like insane. I only had a few hours to prepare for this, and I'm like, holy crap!
The
That's
most
what I
fun
said.
one was Hollywood Bowl because we were introduced by Robin Williams. Robin had been on the tour with us. He kept turning up wherever we were, Robin Williams, and he was just so funny. And we ended up doing a one-night gig, a one-night stand at Hollywood Bowl. If you imagine what that is like, never mind standing on the stage at Carnegie Hall, standing on the stage at the Hollywood Bowl, being introduced by Robin Williams. So
That's insane.
Yeah,
But he's my personal hero. Him and Howard Stern are like the two people, comedian and interviewer.
Right? Right.
That-
But see, those are the things I was going to
Thank you
bring
for
up
inviting me.
during the show.
I'm actually, so the viewers know, I'm actually in the Netherlands. I actually hail from the UK, going to the UK on Monday. But actually, right now, we're on Central European time, so that's why it's midnight. And yeah, I'm in the Netherlands right now. So.
Oh wow.
Wow. And then we've got a ton of viewers, and there's questions and comments already popping in everywhere. So let's just start with go ahead, Leo. You can do your thing.
Fire away. I can't see any questions. There's a thing, a tab I can see where I can see questions. But if you want to read them to me, by all
Yeah,
means,
totally. So Catherine is asking, hi, what were your favorite stunts to do in Robin of Sherwood?
Oh, wow. Robin is still, in fact, I'm seeing the boys next week. We are all still, as we were once described by what the first aid is, you are a right little firm. And by a right little firm, in London, if you're a right little firm, it means that you are a tight little unit, a little tight little unit. And we did all our own stunts. I think I was doubled one of the horse stunts where the stunt coordinator jump off the horse and take this guy off the horse. And the horse that we were using was a polo pony called Pringle, which I'd rode a lot. And anyway, this guy didn't trust his horse. He actually did the jump off the horse onto this mound and took this other guy. And then Teddy wanted him to roll between the horse's legs, and he wouldn't do it. So Teddy said, "I'm not doing that. The horse is going to jump up and down on me." So he said, "Can you do that? Would you roll underneath the horse, come up and do the sword fight?" So I said, "Sure." So I went and talked to Pringle the horse.
Sure, no problem.
As you do, and said, "Pringley Wingley," because he had a big scar down his nose here because he'd been hit by a polo mallet. And one ear like this, and one ear was like that. But anyway, he was my mate, and so I said to him, "I'm gonna just roll between your legs and just stay still. Hopefully, everything will be fine. You'll shoot that." So I talked to him and give him a little blow on the nose, little nuzzle, and he let me do it. In fact, I think I did it twice. I actually ran and rolled underneath the horse's legs, came up the side, then took the other guy off the horse. So that's probably one of my favourites, only because the stuntman used to do it. He was like, I'm not doing that, buddy, go mad. Get the actor to do it. So we did most of our own. Everybody did. In fact, Ray Winston, on my Ray, he got a stunt adjustment for one, where he actually took one of the stuntmen off in a big fight with Jason Connery episode, took the stunt guy off the roof onto the crash mat himself from about 20 feet, and he actually got a stunt adjustment for it. As an actor, that's quite a compliment for the stunt guys to go, no, I wouldn't do that. No, for the actor. Yeah, we did a lot of that, and it was great fun to do. Robin is still to this day part of my heart, part of my legacy, and part of my life.
How did you even get into acting with your resume before acting? Like you were a private investigator. You've done military service, like secret service, like not secret service, but
special forces.
Yeah, special forces and stuff. Like you're.
Yeah, I came later. I was actually in Yorkshire. My dad was a club. He was a social singer in the working men's clubs, and so I grew up doing shows at school before I was asked to leave. And I was throwing knives in the metalwork room and making masterpieces. I obviously had a propensity for illegal activities. This is absolutely true. And I had keys to the rooms because I made him in the metalwork. And if it hadn't have been for the music industry, I probably would have been somewhere along the line of that business to this day. But anyway, the music industry came along because I was very musical. I could sing and all that. And I ended up working in what they call the working men's clubs, which was doing, turns in working men's clubs in Northern England, which in those days, particularly in Scotland and Wales and the Northeast, if you've ever seen a film called Get Carter, that is Northern England. That really is what it was like in those days in the 70s. And so that was quite an experience. So I was always in the music industry, and the music industry took me to interesting and strange places. I was either singing and carrying my equipment, my music, and touring, doing that kind of thing, doing songs from the shows. But even then, I was a bit wacky. I was doing things that other people weren't doing. MacArthur Park, the working men's club, is a little bit different. But I was doing that kind of stuff and got a reputation for doing these odd things from musicals, excerpts from The King and I, or excerpts from Romeo and Juliet. So I was doing these odd musical things in a setting that was not when people didn't do that. And so I ended up getting invited to go to Zambia and to tour Africa, actually doing singing this kind of material. And so I ended up in Zambia and Kitwe and Lusaka in the middle of a CIA KGB war. And you meet all kinds of people in the 70s in Central Africa. And thereby hangs the rest of the tale.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine what the CIA was doing in Africa, but yeah, that's cool.
Well, there was a massive conflict going on in the 70s, and probably it's renewed itself now. Over, for instance, Zambia is one of the biggest copper I didn't know this, of course, when I went there. Is one of the biggest copper manufacturers in the world. The Rukana mine is one of the biggest, other than the man-made hole in Chile that they made. But the biggest man-made holes ever on the face of the planet is in Zambia, where they dig up copper. And I still have a piece of it which I brought back with me from Africa. And that destabilization, don't forget, apartheid had not crashed at this point in the proceedings. So Zambia was a borderline state, which was part of the British Commonwealth. It wasn't part of, ruled by the government, but it was still part of the family of the Commonwealth. So the Brits still had a lot of influence there. And obviously it was borderline then with Zimbabwe, which was then Rhodesia. And I remember standing on the Zambezi River, the Knife Edge Bridge, overlooking the train that goes backwards and forwards, and look over one side into then what was Rhodesia and is now Zambia. Brain's gone dead. Anyway, there I was overlooking that, and the next piece down was South Africa. So it was quite an interesting time. And for a while, I was based in the Intercontinental Hotel. Shout out Intercontinental Hotel in Lusaka, where just about every spook on the face of the planet convened. And while I was there, President Podgorny, who was the head of the Presidium of the USSR, was on a national visit to Zambia. So the place was crawling with KGB, MI6, CIA, everybody. And it was an interesting time in Africa.
You see, that's strange that a person like you walks into that. A person like me, I'm like, oh God, I got to get the hell out of here.
Oh no, I was fascinated. Oh no, and not only that, the weird thing was that some of the people actually sought me out, I think, because again, I was such an odd fish, this musical lunacy that was going on, me doing West Side Story and stuff like that in the center of Africa. People often came up, and this was part of the issue, not issue in the sense of bad thing, but I think people just wanted to sit and chat about theatre and art and music and all writing and all that kind of stuff. And I got to talk to some very interesting people, and that's when I got back to the UK, when I got the tap on the shoulder going, young man, because don't forget, this was previous to Dean, this was previous to Evita, which opened in '78. You know, I'm always looking at that. So this was previous to all of that. So I'd not really been exposed to this mad world out there. I didn't really know what I was talking to, and neither was I particularly worried about it. You know, I knew that people were carrying guns. I could see that people had, you know, things strapped on them, and it was there were rumors of very strange and dangerous and nasty things going on. But again, you know, I was a kid in the music industry. I didn't know.
Right. Wow. And folks, that wasn't a movie that he played in. That was real life.
Yeah, that's real life.
That's real life.
That was the movies yet.
Yeah, we haven't even got into the movies
before you get to acting. Wow, that's
that's before I got to acting.
Now,
but you did mention. Okay, we good?
Go for it.
Right.
Go for it. Go for
You
it.
mentioned. You did mention Vida, which was. I'm gonna drive up there and kick you right in your nuts. You mentioned Evita. So how was that? I mean, working with Andrew Lloyd Webber. I mean,
when I got back, I think what was it before I went to Africa? Before I went to Africa, I did what we call Panto here in Manchester, which is a Christmas show, which is one of those audience participation things where the cast interact. If you look at my Facebook page, not Facebook, Instagram, there's a picture of me Captain Hook. And the whole thing about Panto is that we could go into the whole drag issue if you like, but there's a long tradition of male parts in British theatre, male guys playing female parts and female males. There's a whole history going back to Shakespeare of why that was done, whether it was just for convenience or whatever, but there's a whole history of that. And one of the biggest things of that is pantomime, where literally you'll have the ugly sisters played by two guys and all that, comedians and all that kind of stuff. And the prince is always played by a beautiful woman and all that kind of stuff. So that is something which has been British theatre tradition for 300 years, and it's not going to change no matter what they try in Florida. I can tell you that change it. Part of British culture. Monty is all the guys dressed up and paying that. And you brought up, you know, I've dressed up as a woman for Eric Idle and stood on the stage of Carnegie Hall, dressed as one of the most ugliest women you've ever seen in your life, singing "Sit on My Face and Tell Me That You Love Me." So, that's how far that goes. So, Yeah, so I ended up. There was a singer called Tony Christie, who was a well-known British singer of popular songs, and I was a big fan of him. He was a great live act. He was certainly, I thought, he was good as Tom Jones. And I've seen Tom Jones live, and actually did a duet with Tom Jones. It's a whole other story. And I used to go around basically and steal his act. If you're going to steal from the best and learn from the best. So I would go around and literally listen to some of the stuff that he did and steal it, because he'd do bits of opera, he'd do musicals, he'd do all these, popular songs. And I used to go around the theatre when we were doing pantomime, and I would be singing Tony Christie. In fact, I took the cast to see him do a live performance. And one of the girls that was in the show said, there's only one person that can play Magaldi when it opens in the West End, and it's you, because you're such a big Tony Christie fan, because Tony, the original White album that was Don't Cry For Me Argentina, was such a massive hit. And I didn't even really take it in. I didn't know what Evita was. I knew that there'd been a number one in the UK for months, literally. Don't Cry For Me Argentina was a huge, massive hit. And so when my then manager in London said, I want you to go and audition for Harold Prince, I didn't know who Harold Prince really was. I knew he was American, he was a big, powerful director, all that kind of stuff. We went along and I sang a version of Old Man River. Old Man River, old man River, he just knew nothing. He don't say nothing, he keep on rolling.
Oh, yeah.
He keeps on rolling along. And Hal Prince stood up in the middle of this audition and went, you are my Magaldi. You're Magaldi, right? And so that's how I got the part. So I had 4 years in the original London cast to be to play Magaldi first, and then transitioned to play Che Guevara. So I had Magaldi and Che, which is probably one of the greatest parts for somebody like me of that age to play in the West End show, hit West End show. I went and stole Mandy Patinkin's act. They actually flew me to New York to sit down and take notes from Mandy Patinkin's performance of Che, and that's what I took back to the UK. I was told to do that by Harold Prince, and so I did. And that kind of
pinch yourself to make sure you're awake.
Again?
Do you ever pinch yourself to make sure you're awake through all this? This is amazing. Your life is just wow.
I have a weird philosophy. I've been asked about it before, and if you don't, it's just really about quantum mechanics, physics. Observing the particle changes the particle. So if you're not living your dream, you're living somebody else's nightmare. So create your own waveform, create your own possibilities and probabilities. And this is a true story. We were sat around one night, Jason Connery, Ray Winston, just to name drop a few, Clive Mantle, and we were talking about why we'd done what you just said. How did that? What's the mechanics of how that works? And Ray said something, I totally credit him every time I say it because it's true. He said, I said, God, we've been lucky. And he went, Monkey, you create your own luck. You got to create your own luck. And I went, yeah, but when you think of all the barriers that are in the way of doing things that you want to do, getting over them, round and through, whatever. He said, yeah, he said, but Marky, we didn't even know the barriers were there. For us, they didn't exist. So we went straight through them. And it took me about a week after he said that, sitting in the car, driving around and doing what I was doing. And I would go back to him and go, how much of that is true in my own life? Was I not aware? And there's a certain element of the element of the fool in tarot, the idea of stepping off the cliff with trust and just walking into the situation. And somehow the universe, if it is conscious, and I believe that there's an element of consciousness in the universe, reacts to you creating that waveform. It's physics. You create a new possibility. And the universe doesn't know quite how to deal with it. So it goes, oh, let's see how far this idiot can go. Let's see how far it can go. And that's been my philosophy because I've been able to express it in the last few years. But I didn't know it when I was younger. I just did it. And I've been often, somebody said to me about the whole thing from Apocalypse Now, Kilgore, about that weird light. I said, you've got that weird light, dude. You're going to be fine, whatever you do, you know. And when I think back, I go, shit, that was stupid and dangerous. And I should not have done that, and walked away. And I didn't know why. And I've often said to myself, I should have been, you know, something should have happened. I should have been, you know, in hospital before now. I've walked away several times. And I think there's the whole thing of almost creating that essence of just in Lawrence of Arabia, the whole thing about Lawrence creating his own writing. He has the writing, he still has the writing. And in that, the culture, the idea that you are writing your own destiny, and that God allows you to do that because you write your own destiny, go with it. And there's a great quote, which I'll get wrong, but I'll probably I'll misquote it, but it's about the dangerous men are the men that dream when they're awake, because they actually make their dreams a reality. And I don't know, there's something about that. There's something about just stepping into the void and letting the void, trusting the void and letting it bring stuff to you. So anyway, that's been my philosophy for the last few years.
I did that once, step into the void, but I was drinking at the time and didn't turn out well.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. Yeah, yes, I've certainly had adventures skiing, what some of the famous stories about skiing while drunk, and again, why I've not broken everything.
Seems like such a.
Well, why would you do it sober? That's what I want to know.
That's
why
true.
would you do it? Exactly. Why would you hurl yourself down a mountain? In a bunch of pals and I went skiing, but again, bringing Brits, of course, and bringing France. You get utterly blotto. And we went what's called poubelling, which is you wrap yourself in a black plastic bin liner and throw yourself down the Black Run.
Oh my
mountain.
God! Wow, that sounds like skiing.
It's like on your ass, and about at 50 miles an hour. And hopefully you don't meet a tree. And I actually met a construction site, and where they were actually had rebar bits of metal sticking up. Everybody had some kind of injury, but I ended up with a piece of rebar sort of sticking through my thigh. So but it was cold, so I didn't feel it. It was okay.
We had several questions come in. I'm going to try to get to them as best as I can. So if I don't get a chance to get to your question, I'm totally sorry, but I'll make sure we try at least. So Catherine is asking, what sort of fun did you have on the different sets with pranks?
Wow. We actually, particularly on Robin, we did a lot of pranks. Now, it's calmed down a lot these days because the money involved is so huge. People are so worried about being fired for doing things. They don't do it anymore. But on Robin, we sometimes set up a prank that would take literally weeks to set up. And Stevie Dent, the now world famous stunt coordinator, who's done amazing work on a lot of things. He was our original horse master, and Steve was but he was just beginning that whole thing then in 1982, 83. So we set up this prank, and all stuntmen love to set themselves on fire, throw themselves off of buildings, hang off of airplanes, all kinds of stuff like that, swim in the bottom of lakes, whatever. They love doing that shit, but they hate speaking dialogue in front of each other. You ask them, no, it terrifies them. The idea that you actually have to say a line on camera in a scene, you see them go white, the blood drains from and then you go, and so we set up a prank with Steve where they actually wrote a scene into a script for an episode. This is absolutely true. This would not happen. They wrote a scene into an episode, and we needed somebody to be hanging from a tree upside down, suspended from a tree. And this was a Norman guy, and he had dialogue. And the director, God bless him, Ian Sharp, they dragged this out for weeks. And finally, as we're getting closer to the film date, Ian said, "You got to ask somebody to do one of your stunt boys." Completely set up. And so he went to Steve and he said, "Steve, you're going to have to do this scene hanging from a tree upside down. This is Norman Guard, and you've got this dialogue." Well, I thought Steve was going to just melt into a... He was like, "Look, what?" He said, "No, you've got to say these lines." And they gave him the lines and said, "You've got to say this." It was something like, "Egbert, Egbert, are you there? Cuckoo, cuckoo." Because he was pretending to be a bird in a tree, right? Of course. Actually, the day we shot it was the day of his birthday.
Oh.
So we actually had the horsemaster hanging from a tree, upside down, terrified of actually having to do dialogue, and having to say the lines "Egbert, Egbert, cuckoo, cuckoo" while we filmed it. And as he was hanging upside down from the tree, they brought out the birthday cake, and the Belgians out the cake and all that kind of stuff. So we played massive jokes on each other, and Michael during Transformers does the same thing. And I have to say, he's pulled a few strokes on people. He's had us all going at one point, you know. So it does happen. If nowadays it's got to be a Michael Bay character that does it, which you get away with it because he's the film. But there's not a lot of that goes on much more because of the money. You know what I mean? The idea that you are. God rest his soul.
You think COVID had anything to do with that, where the change happened because it cost so much more to get the films together, people getting them all together, get made and stuff? Do you think because people became more focused on that, it made it?
It changed before that. It changed before. It was really the move from producer, writer, director to showrunner, where the showrunner became the king of the set. And they had control of the set, and to the point where, you know, usually the writer showrunner such can change a line to say what he said, and sometimes that's a good thing. You know, sometimes from the big successful shows where the guy that wrote the book or the lady that wrote the book, like Outlander, has artistic control. So what they say goes. And Robin and other shows that I worked on previous to that, you were allowed to put more into it. In fact, Robin, I would say, was a success because of the group thing. And for instance, again, it's history, but it's true. The man that wrote it, Richard Carpenter, was probably one of the best British writers in British television. When I actually was going to be Edmund the Archer, but I transitioned from being Edmund the Archer to being Nasir the Saracen in literally the first day of shooting. Ian came up to me and said, "You're no longer Edmund the Archer, you're Nasir the Saracen. Can you do a sword fight with 2 swords?" I said, "Yeah, how long have I got?" He said, "About half an hour." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You actually got a week." Okay. But I said, "Yes, you see." I invited the universe. I said, "You know." And so I transitioned to being Nasir the Saracen, but the writer that wrote the entire show, that decision was made, and he called me. This wouldn't happen today. A writer calling an actor and going, "Got any ideas? I have no idea what we're going to do with the characters. We didn't plan this." So Nasir, the guy that killed people in One Hour British Family Viewed in the UK, I don't no idea. Have you got any suggestions? And I said, "Well, I've just finished reading Sir Stephen Runciman's History of the Crusades. There's 3 volumes by Sir Stephen Runciman, which are the textbook about the history of the Crusades. And in there's an interesting relationship between the Knights Templar and the cult of the Assassins, whose name is tied from Hashishiyun. Hashish. So that all comes from that." And I said, the interesting thing about the Knights Templar and the Hashishiyans, the assassins, was they had a very similar spiritual belief system And also they were into the medical side of it. We were hospital nights. And Astrolabe, which was the thing that later the British Navy conquered the world's oceans with, all came from that influence. And so that we talked about that kid and he said, but I've got no dialogue. I'm going to write dialogue. And I said, don't give me the dialogue. Don't need to. School of acting. Give me the action. Give me the knife throwing, the sword fights, the horses, the tracking, all of that stuff. Give me the medical stuff, fixing people's wounds and all that kind of stuff. Give me that, and the character will speak through what he does, not through what he says. And so for 3 years of my life, I played a character that spoke very few lines. So I went from playing Che Guevara. We did a film called Who Dares Wins about the Iranian embassy siege about the SAS, and about the raid of the Iranian embassy siege. And I went from that character doing a film and singing Che Guevara to a character that spoke, I think, 6 lines in the entire 3 years of the series, but it's still one of the iconic characters in the show.
It is probably one of the most memorable of your characters, yeah, and from the show.
Yeah, thank you. It was a delight to play, and I mean, I grew up playing in Sherwood. I grew up hiding in the Major Oak as a child. My family, 3 generations back, played in Sherwood Forest. There's pictures of my mother and my grandmother and particularly the women. I call it the women of Sherwood, but there's a picture of my 3 generations of women at the Major Oak, which then as kids we used to play Robin Hood, and the tree is so big you can actually get inside it. And so, well, you can't anymore. They've stopped it because people have set fire to it because they're stupid. And so I grew up in that environment, absorbed the Celtic history, the Roman history, the Norman history. You just do, whether you like it or not, kid, even if you're not interested. You just hear it. And so it becomes part of your personality. And so Robin, to me, is still one of the most interesting. That's why we've just done the show long. I've written 3 books about the psychology of talent and the imagery, marine imagery. And so Sherwood Oracle is the new one that come out this year with Sterling in New York.
Man. And where can they find out all about that stuff, Leo?
Well, if you check show notes up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us, you can find all that information about our awesome guest. We had some more comments and questions come in. Tristan is asking, what are some of your favorite hobbies to do now?
Hobbies to do?
How do you have time to do hobbies? But what are they?
Right?
With a 2-year-old.
One of your hobbies, so.
Yeah, well, that used to be one of my hobbies. We have a 2-year-old. We have a little boat here, which is on the Frisian Lakes. I'm actually speaking to you. If you've ever heard of Frisian horses and Frisian cows, I'm actually in Frisia, which is the northern part of the Netherlands. Oh, this is the lakes of. So we're actually, in the lakes of the Netherlands, which is the northern part of Dutch, territory, and so Netherlands. And we have a little boat here, and that's become kind of my a place of refuge where I hide. And that's a hobby. But I don't really think of them as hobbies. I think they're more kind of just weird interests. I don't get as much chance to read. I was an avid, mad reader. So, I would consume books on a weekly level. I've stopped doing that in the last few years, I guess because of social media and all that kind of stuff. So that is now has moved slightly aside. And I used to go mountaineering a lot, throw myself into mountain ranges and stuff like that. And we still camp, we're still talking about a camping expedition to Normandy. I'm a bit of a second world history buff, so I like going and visiting the battlegrounds of particularly the beaches and places like that, of Normandy and all over really. So I'm a bit of a history buff, so that's one of the things that I pursue. when I've got time.
Exactly.
But about
what? It just got quiet. Everybody was just
I was going to let other people ask questions, but I got a million.
Yeah,
more
Leo, you haven't asked anything. I know Leo's got a bunch of questions. I see him.
Well, I want to make sure we get to the questions in the chat. So Rico's asking, what was the most challenging part of playing Bumblebee whenever we get to that part? Well, pretty much
So
any
why
of the
don't you get us to that part then?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Leo is a Transformer nerd, so like he's really excited about this.
Well, go on. Is that the end of the question? You want to ask me how that all came about? I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I know you played many more voices other than Bumblebee. You did both the games and the movies as well. But yeah, how did you fall into the Transformers lore? Like, starting with the first movie there, it seems like you've been in everything with
I did
the
all
universe.
5. I was on the set of all 5 of those films as the on-set robot, working with the actors, Francis McDormand, you name it, Anthony Hopkins, everyone. And so when they're actually, one of the lessons they learned from the Star Wars productions, the first ones that were done, was if you stick a green screen in front of people with nobody there and just say the lines, it doesn't work. You have to have a live response for an actor to work against to bring out a performance. Otherwise, just saying the lines is dead. And so Michael learned that lesson, I think, from Steven Spielberg. Said, get a body that can actually do these lines with the actors on set, and go to CGI, because we can build robots. We actually did build one robot. The actual Bumblebee robot was built by a mate of mine. And he was 17 feet tall and he weighs 2 tons, which means that he took a long time moving around the set. But there is actually a Bumblebee robot, which is at Paramount Studios in Los Angeles. And so how it happened was I did a film called King Arthur with Antoine Fuqua directing, and I was the swordmaster and fight director. And the lessons, when anybody asks me about, have you got any advice for actors, is do every job. Do every job on the set. Learn everything that you can, because it's all going to come in useful. So when I did First Night with Sean Connery and Richard Gere and all that kind of stuff, I worked with Bob Anderson, the swordmaster who did Princess Bride and Highlander and all those ones, Zorro. And I learned so much from him, being behind the camera as opposed to being in front of it, about how you manage that size of production. And so when we got to King Arthur, we had Keira Knightley, Mads Mikkelsen. We had an amazing cast, and I was working closely with all of them, but I wasn't in front of the camera. And you kind of put that head on, you become swordmaster. But you're dealing with a multitude of skills: cameras, sound, lighting, special effects. All of that kind of stuff you have to carry with you onto the set, and your ability to use that. And particularly working with a director like Antoine Fuqua, who used to come to me some mornings and go, "What would you like to shoot? What have we got ready? I said, everything, whatever you want to shoot. If you've got a problem with the light, and the weather, whatever." And so that ability to be able to multitask on a $130 million film is kind of useful. So when I got to, and it was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. So I think by the time I got to LA, back to LA, and I got asked about this job, about my agent called me and said, we want to tape for something and do some stuff, but I can't tell you what the project is. And I said, well, how am I supposed to know? He said, we're going to send you some lines, just do the lines, and you're going to go in for a meeting, just go with it, right? So that thing about walking into the void. And I said, sure. So I recorded these lines, 5 different robots at the same time, or 5 different voices. I didn't really understand what they were at the time, because they changed the names, changed the whole scene, and God knows what. So I went in, did it, got a call, and my agent called me and said, okay, Michael Bay wants you on the scene. And I said, what? Wait. So it's Michael Bay. The music is Transformers. The interesting news is it's Michael Bay. And I have to say, from the very first moment working with Michael, I did not have a problem. I have not had a problem with him. He's very fast. I'll tell you this quick story. I'm sure that Sir Anthony Hopkins, for Tony, won't mind me telling the story because it's true. There was one morning on the set of this film, and if anybody's word is good, it's got to be Anthony Hopkins, right? He came to me and he said, Mark, how many of these have you done? I said, this is my 5th one. He said, well, I've worked with a few directors. I said, he must have worked. He worked with a few directors. He said, I've never seen anybody do what Michael can do. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Michael can pick up anything on the set, any camera, lighting equipment, you name it. He knows this set. He knows everybody's job better than most people on the set that they've had to do the job. Special effects, stunts, whatever. Michael knows it all intimately in detail. He knows exactly what he wants. So I've never seen anybody pick up a camera, go to a camera, use this, adjust that, do it on the set the way that Michael Bay. He said he really is a genius. I said he is a genius. I said, but I know he doesn't get the credit for that, but I said, and I then went on to explain to him, I said, he came to me the very first day we were shooting, and he showed me the animatics. And the very first scene that we shot was the scene at the Witwicky household where the cast turned into a robot and then they're hiding it. But in those days, we didn't have full-blown CGI stuff. They were literally they were line drawings where the robots were supposed to be. And I've got one of those odd brains. And he said, come and look at this. So he showed me the animatic rendering of what the scene was supposed to be, with the robots hiding under the house. And I laughed. And he looked at me and said, can you see that? I said, yeah, I get it. You got giant alien robots hiding under a house in LA. I said, it's funny, it's great. I said, that's what you want me to do? And he went, yeah, can you sure? I said, yeah, no problem. Went, let's go. And that's how it was for a decade. Every was 2 years cycle, so 5 years. I could see what he wanted to do, was trying to achieve, and we did it. And we did it with some of the best actors in the world, John Turturro, you know what I mean? These guys, they're demanding with Stanley Tucci, you know what I mean? You're doing dialogue with them, and you're stood there behind the camera or hidden under a table or a ladder, doing dialogue with them. It was a fantastic honor to be able to do that on the set. And actually, Peter Cullen, if you're a Transformers fan, came to the set one day, and he was sitting with me because he was on his way down to San Diego shooting. He was sat next to me, and he said, he was watching me running around the set because I'm wired for sound. I had headphones on, microphones strapped everywhere, you can imagine. And he said, I couldn't do what you're doing. I don't even understand how you're doing what you're doing. How do you know what's coming next? I said, because I'm cheating a bit. I said, I've got the sound guys and vibe so I can hear what we're doing on the set, so I know what bit of paper to look at next, to do stuff. And then the timing of the special effects and the camera moves and all that kind of stuff. I said, it's just all of that experience I got from First Night and King Arthur, understanding the mechanics of a big set came in when it came to working with Michael, because I understood how that worked. And so there we go, 10 years, 5 films.
That's amazing. 10 years. That's a nice
I love the way he
little
said
run.
it. He's like, 10 years, 5 films.
So, with you've written comic books, autobiographies, and tarot books, which kind of caught me off guard. What's the fascination with tarot?
I first got into trying to understand the mechanics of tarot. I guess during Evita, actually, probably my first trip to Los Angeles to the Public Street bookstore, isn't there now. And there was all this tarot material. Tarot is a mechanism for, there's no magic in tarot. The magic's in here, right? And so what tarot does, because it's Jungian in in its nature is that you get an emotional response to the imagery, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, as human beings, we grow up with the sun going up, and then the moon coming up, and then the sun going down. We deal with those natural, our five senses. So the imagery is designed to provoke an emotional response. So analytical part of it. And you look at an image and go, oh, you get an emotional response to it. And on a simple level, what tarot does is it kind of puts them into the compartments of elements in human experience. So, for instance, whether it's to do with sea, sun, food, water, shelter, fire, and food, basically the ultimate survival. If you've ever read WWII's book, the SAS Survival Handbook, I was very lucky to be taught by WWII's. Those are the elements: water, shelter, fire, and food. And so those are the elements that all human beings relate to that emotionally because they're parts of how we survive. And tarot is the same. The imagery itself is designed to provoke an emotional response. Now, I personally don't believe in telling the future with tarot. That's what tarot does. It gives you a snapshot of the way that you are reacting to a question. When I read for people, I don't even want to know what the question is. I'm not interested in the questions in a way. I just read for them the way that the cards lay out, because there's another element, which is to do with synchronicity, which sometimes when you ask a question of the tarot, to plug my computer, it was going back into that. If you ask a question of the universe, it will give you a response, whether you like it or not. And it's the idea of creating a void. By asking a question, you create a void. And the universe doesn't like voids, so it will bring you an answer whether you like it or not. You're going to get a response. And so tarot is kind of like one of those psychological triggering devices. And I found that fascinating. The only thing I couldn't early on in my early dealings into this was I couldn't get Kabbalah, which a lot of the Renaissance Kabbalah in the decks were based on Kabbalah. So I don't speak Kabbalah. I do speak Wheel of the Year, which was the ancient northern tradition of how they view, like they built Stonehenge for some reason, of studying how the seasons change and animals change and how the environment changes. So we probably, myself and Jessica Bottom, wrote the first book, tarot system, based on the Wheel of the Year, called the Wheel of Tarot. And again, the rest is history. Kind of changed tarot history. It was the first deck that actually went, let's strip out Kabbalah, because it confuses people, and let's go back to the origins of a lot of, for instance, the festivals like Easter. It's got nothing to do with Christianity. Zero. Christmas, zero. It's about the coming of the new year and the solstices, the shortest day, the longest days, how the animals react to the environment. So a lot of those things we celebrate, like Easter and even Christmas, lots of other things, were originally pagan festivals, got nothing to do with any kind of organized religion whatsoever. It's all to do with how people related to the environment and the messages that they took from the environment, whether it was the animals that were coming out of hibernation, or the way they had to prepare for the winter months. So that's what fascinated me.
So the tarot is nothing like Pokemon, is what you're saying.
It's not like Pokemon.
Because I've been trying to collect all. Because every time I collect them all, they come out with another deck. Horrible.
That is now. I understand where you're going with that, and I see your point. Because how can you keep writing something which is supposed to be, eternally true? Well, the interesting thing is, particularly about tarot, it's a very personal. So the first deck I bought was called the Rider-Waite deck, which is kind of one of the universal bestsellers. And funny enough, Wildwood Tarot, which I wrote with John Matthews, is probably one of the third or the fourth best-selling tarot decks in history. The one that I bought after that, which I was recommended, I could not understand it at all. It was Jewish to me. It literally, I looked at it and went, utter chaos. I don't understand what I even bought this for. So it's very personal how you react to the imagery and the concept. But that is why Wildwood is so successful, I think, is because it's accessible. The artwork is not too esoteric and too complex. You actually can look at it and go, oh, I get what that's talking about. I understand what that card means for a lot of people.
Okay.
Pokemon, I'm not so sure I've ever got Pokemon.
Okay.
But I ever would. So, you know.
Well, I'm not a big collector anymore because I just can't afford any more cards. So
I'm not what to do with cards. But can you tell the future with Pokemon cards?
Probably.
Well, if you keep drawing Pikachu, yeah.
It's shocking.
It is shocking, yeah.
Oh my God.
It was also a way for, particularly in the Renaissance, to encode within the imagery things were not acceptable to the church. That was the other thing, that within the cards, this whole concept of what we just talked about, pagan religions, pre-Christian religions, being able to preserve what they saw as being spiritual to them. For instance, in Yorkshire, there's a whole series of massive abbeys, Revo Abbey, various other places that you can go and visit. And one of the places that I used to spend a lot of time, I think it was at Revo. They have on the outside of the shoulder to the actual, it was a Cistercian monastery, obviously was wiped out by Henry VIII during the Reformation. So the places were looted and robbed and wiped out. So, but these actual remnants of these massive Cistercian monasteries they built in Yorkshire, again to do with the Knights Templar and why York was the centre of all of this and not London, because the exchequer was kept in York. So at the time of the Crusades, the Knights Templars, one of their central points of power in York, was not in Scotland, it was nowhere else, in York. And around York, there were nine Knights Templar preceptories, most of which I visited. So it was about the money and how this money was shipped backwards and forwards from the Crusades. And around there are these massive places. And one of those places, which is now a ruin, on the right-hand transept of the actual abbey, on the outside of that is the biggest green man figure, if you know what a green man figure is, the foliate-faced figure with the beard that turns into greenery, and the mouth that's got foliate leaves coming out their mouths. And
Sean Connery played that part.
Yeah, he played the Green Knight, which there's a whole story about that in the book, but that's the whole thing. And so on the outside of the church, he is the Green Man. He is the spirit of human nature in the wild, if you like, in the woods, in the forest. As you go inside the church, the beard goes into the church, comes into the church. On the inside of the church, he turns into an angel. So the green man, the demons of the old religions become the gods of the next. So he's outside the church as a green man. As he flows through the window and his beard and his foliate face inside, he becomes an angel holding a book which have got psalms and dates and stuff on it.
I see. Oh. I didn't know that.
Yep.
So, Leo, any more questions?
So we've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, wow, is that all?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left.
I'm all jacked up.
I didn't even ask him about Digimon yet. What the hell?
We went from Pokemon to Digimon.
Have they not bred? Have they not got an offspring now? Digimon, Pokemon.
I use references I know. I'm sorry.
Let's ask some of the questions that the people are written into, because I'm sure they've got something like, why are you not in prison? Things like that.
That is a good question. No. But I've always wondered, has there been any roles that you've turned down? A lot of people ask that you regret, but that you turned down and you turned back and been like, you know what, I'm glad I didn't take that role on. And if I had, I would have missed out on these opportunities here?
No, I've left a couple of productions because I didn't feel comfortable, or I didn't feel I could do my best work in the environment that I was in. Let's put it that way. And involuntarily usually sat down with the director and gone, this is not working. And it's usually a theatrical. After playing Shay for 2 years, you know, one of my dreams was to play that kind of character, create that kind of character on stage. Yeah. And so after doing that for 2 years, you can't do stuff less than that. That sounds weird. And there's been a couple of occasions where I got signed up to do a show or something, and it was just, I didn't get the buzz, you know, I didn't get the vibe. And so I've gone to the director and gone, it's not working. And they would usually go, you're right. Off you go, we'll find somebody else who can do it or want us to do it or whatever. But really, no, I've no regrets of any of that at all. None. I mean, extremely fortunate. I can't tell you how, when fans come up to me at conventions and stuff like that, you know, I go, well, I'm a fan. I grew up with The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I grew up with Land of the Giants. I grew up watching those shows as a kid. You know what I mean? I you know, go up to people at conventions that are there from those shows and go, I watched your show. You know what I mean? I loved it as a kid. So I met Adam West. I met Batman. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Yeah. That kind of stuff. And so no, I'm incredibly fortunate to have been, as Ray would say, not lucky. We created our own look, I guess, and didn't see the barriers. So no, I have no regrets.
Nice.
Well, they had to be great meeting Adam West, the original Batman. I mean, they had to be awesome. So, because I remember watching the TV show at the time, and it was like, it was great. I watch it now, and I was like, how was I entertained by that? Because it was just.
How were you not entertained?
Right?
Well, I guess I don't remember
who invited this guy.
You can always is how they deal with the fact.
Yeah, I didn't realize everything was called bat, like the bat jump rope and all that stuff. So
bat boat,
Pokebat. No, that's isn't it? Something like, no, I don't know. It's something they don't want to go. Pokebat, no.
Pokebat. Digibat.
They don't have
Oh my.
Well, we have one final question that came in. Tristan was asking, what would you give for advice for another aspiring actor?
Like I said earlier on, learn it all. Take any job, whether it's first assistant, second assistant, coffee maker, whatever. I did the same. I was an extra in Yorkshire on various shows when I was working the clubs. I learned how a set worked. First director, second director, you know, all of that, producer. I learned all of those relationships from being an extra. And take any job that you're offered, do it well, do it full blown, do it with passion, do it as best as your ability, and learn eclectically from everything on the set, because I'm living proof that what you learn on, I used to have actors on first year, almost on 9 months anyway, sword fighting with Richard, you know, getting up to speed on us. And I had actors coming to me going, why are you doing this? And I tried to explain to them, I'm learning more back here, watching how they deal with you than I would ever do as an actor, because you don't, half the time as an actor, you're not even aware what's going on behind the camera, and you know, all that. Advice: do every job that you can on a set, and take every job that you're offered and learn from it, and then apply what you learn to the next job. And hopefully one day you will get that opportunity where Hal Prince says, or somebody in the base says, you're hired, and just keep going. The job is about rejection. Back to working in the creative business, it's a world of pain. It literally is about being able to survive rejection every day. And
so it's like dating.
A bit like what?
A bit like dating.
but like hate it. I keep
Dating.
Dating.
Yes.
Dating.
Yeah, some people are just you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So but I'm sure that you get lots of ladies throwing themselves at you, you know what I mean, wanting to discuss with you the future of the world and stuff. You know what I mean?
They mostly throw rocks.
Yes, they're dating until the right one, you know, actually finds you.
Oh,
You a bit like I was going, Haiti? What does Haiti got to do with it?
Yeah.
There's a story,
I thought I was enunciating. I didn't realize.
no, it's to do with the sound. So you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're coming in a little low, Eric, but it's nothing major. But Ben, was there anything else before we wrap it?
With his resume, I could be here for another 4 friggin' hours.
Oh yeah, I mean we didn't even touch on
Jaja's over there going, dude, but we didn't even talk about Black Sails. What's going on?
That's true. Yeah.
Black Sails.
Black Sails.
The whole show to
You're gonna have to ask him to come back. Is what you're gonna have to do.
ask me to come back and I'll talk to you about.
So, go ahead. I'm gonna let Jaja have one last question.
Oh,
and
I
then
get
we'll
one.
wrap it up.
Oh,
Yeah, because
well,
I know you were really excited about Black Sails. So,
Well, Black Sails
go ahead.
is all, but like I really want to know about the private investigating stuff. What? Anything crazy? Were you doing it for divorcees? Where your PI days? What was that all about?
I didn't really do that kind of work.
Oh,
On a serious note, no, I was a member of the British Army's Intelligence Corps, and ended up being attached to the UK Special Forces, which included the SBS, which is like your US Navy SEALs, and the SAS, which is like your Delta Force / Green Berets, and got into some interesting and strange. But I specialised in human interviewing because it was the most natural as an actor, because that's one of the reasons why they asked me to come and play. They could become other people. And I'm going to be careful what I say now because I have been other people in other places. And we don't need to know where that was or how that was, all that kind of stuff. And this leads back to the UAP thing. Because signatory to the Official Secrets Act about 4 or 5 times. And I was also signed to what's called a Special Forces contract, which is a media contract. And so there's certain things I can say, certain things I can't say. And having seen what they will do to people who step over that line, I'm very wary of that. I have a nice life. I have a happy life. I write books on tarot and stuff like that, right? So I don't really know. And when I left and went to America in '96, I had a very high security clearance, probably as high as anybody that you're ever probably going to get on this show or any other show, to be honest with you. And it's very expensive and it's very serious. And you're given the big finger warning about what you can and cannot and who they want you to go and work with. So they wanted me, when I moved to America, they wanted me to go and work with the American unit. So I actually volunteered for the American Army, but because I wasn't then an American citizen, I couldn't actually officially join the American military. I was what called a lone hiding, which means that, you know, you go to units, you work with them, train with them and all that kind of stuff, but you're not officially a member of the American military. But I'd worked with the American military a lot in Europe and other places, so it wasn't that strange. I knew what an M16 was, you know what I mean? So there was certain things about that. And then when 9/11 came, I was actually doing a musical called 1776 in LA with Roger Reese. We were actually doing 1776, and I was playing John Dickens. And it happened, 9/11 happened the second week of the show's opening in Los Angeles, and I actually called the British Embassy in Washington, because there wasn't a military attaché in LA, and volunteered. And there's a way of identifying yourself so they know who you are really and what your background is. And if they want you, they'll find you. And so I called and I let them know how to contact me and stuff like that. And I ended up being contacted by some folks and said, we could probably use you to do some stuff. I said, sure, training, whatever. Because by that point, I'm an old man. You know what I mean? I'm not 32. Oh, yes, as you know, all these injuries finally catch up with you. Which money? You can no longer, jump out. And so that led me into being given a license, a private investigator's license, where they said, you're going to have this because some of the work that you're going to do is going to bring you into situations where you will need some form of protection. So I ended up having a PI license in California for 15 years, where I would, again, walk in these situations. Sometimes, again, I have to be careful what I say for lots of different reasons. Multiple homicide situations.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say it more seriously than that, okay?
Yeah.
People who are extremely dangerous and would harm you if they could. And so I have, and obviously I'm still here. So that has served me well over the last few years. And I've walked into those situations on multiple occasions and got away with it. And usually helped solve some issue or a crime. Out of all of that, I'll tell you one experience because it's I won't go into the whole details of it, but it was a multiple homicide situation of foreign nationals in California. Let's put it that way. That narrows it down. And I was asked to come and give my opinion on this because a federal agency, let's put it this way, there was no solving this riddle, what had actually happened. So Numbnut here, the right brain, was asked to come and look at it. And I'll never forget this. I actually was looking at a map, California, Nevada, whatever. And they said, where do you think, what happened and where do you think these people are? And without even thinking about it, I went on the map, my finger on the map said, they're there. And looked at me and I went, don't know why. Anyway, about 6 weeks later, after me driving to Las Vegas and various other places around Nevada and all over some America, southwestern America anyway, we worked out what had happened. And I happened to find the one piece of evidence. I asked for it and I was handed it because they didn't know the significance of it. And so I was handed this one piece of evidence that was the key to the whole thing. So we ended up going to this federal agency's offices on Wilshire Boulevard and explaining with other people from a foreign country what had actually happened and why the federal agency had got it wrong. This is what was happened and these were the people involved. And as I was coming out of the office, if you can imagine trying to brief a federal agency on, and then telling them, and by the way, you're wrong, this is what happened. Did, and they took that. As I was coming out, the mother of one of the victims shot across where we were as I was leaving the office and grabbed me by the arm and said, you know where my son is. I can look at you and I know that you know where my son is. And I looked at her and she literally was gripping over my arm. And I didn't know what to say because we'd just come out of this meeting. And she said, why don't you, I said, I can't tell you because we don't know yet the case. I'm going to ask you a question. Sure. Go ahead. Answer. She said, I want you to return my son's body back to this country. Can you promise me to do that? And I said, I will do my utter best on my oath. You have my word that we will try and resolve this. And she went, thank you. And about 2 months after that, the case was resolved and the bodies were found and they were returned to their home. So,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
so that was the kind of job I did. It wasn't chasing around errand husbands.
No. Very different from what I had in my head.
There is the odd humorous, trust me, story, but that's a whole episode, an hour about people that I've worked with in that whole world of particularly working with the Native American Indians. I spent almost 3 years of my life working with the Native American Indians on the reservations because, you know, and that's fascinating. I love the Native Americans. They're fantastic. They are completely. Yeah. Again, they've got the same philosophy. So, you know, I spent 3 years of my life, the 15, involved with that universe. So, hey.
Yeah, I was.
Like I said, we could sit here for another 2 hours.
Well, that's true.
You know.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
well, you
Eric,
know
I'll
what,
let you, and then Leo's gonna wrap it up.
Okay.
Go ahead,
I was
Eric.
just really, yeah, I was just really amazed by that the story about you in Washington and everything. Yeah, I'm just. I was glad you weren't working for the Clintons, so that was good.
I've given up on American politics. Trust me.
Yeah,
me too.
Me too. Yeah, that's why I joke. A spy movie's more believable than the politics right now. So, yeah.
Right. So I know Leo's got another show.
Shining city on the hill. The rest of the world is looking at you, going, "You are the shining city on the hill." However you think that is, trust me. I'm an adopted American. I'm an American citizen. Trust me, and I've lived and worked all over America. The rest of the world looks at you and goes, America is still the foundation of democracy around the world. That must be preserved and protected at all costs.
I would have
Agreed.
to agree.
Well
Agreed.
said.
You would
Well
have to do
said.
that. So,
Well said. Yeah. So
So-
I know it's after 1 a.m.
congratulations to the flag
where
now.
you are,
Is
and
it? Wow.
Yeah, well, you know what this means, Ben. You know,
Yeah.
you'll just have to have him back because
That's true.
I hope so.
we haven't scratched on. So we'll wrap things up. I want to thank everybody for watching this fine evening. For me, just Google Leo Pond. You find a bunch of stuff. Could be true, could be not. I'm not going to say which is which, but I run a Dorkening Podcast Network. We got a ton of shows on the network. A lot of awesome people doing a lot of awesome stuff. Look for us at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be doing another show tonight. And so, Mark, where do you like people interacting with you on social media?
Well, I'm on Instagram a bit now and again. I don't really get much time to do this anymore. You know, I'm on Instagram a bit. I'm on Facebook. I still use Facebook a lot for friends and family and people, particularly in the Robin of Sherwood community, Transformers community, actually, still. And I am on Twitter. Twitter has changed, as you know. But if you want to look for me, I'm on Twitter, Mark Ryan 243, and I get a lot of stuff and a lot of bots and a lot of thanks. Feel free. It's water off a duck's back, man. So I don't really care what you think of me. You know what I mean? If you want to say nice things, be nice. If you don't because I don't have the time. But so yeah, really, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are still my major.
Awesome.
But please look for Sherwood Oracle, because that will be coming out next year through Sterling, and we're going to be doing obviously major promotions for that. And if it's as successful as Wildwood Tarot, then everybody will be happy. And we are working, just so you chaps know, on a show and a podcast regarding the patents that are linked to some of the things we talk about, UAPs and UAPs, because that information is not out yet there in the public yet, and we think there's a show there which will probably explain some of the stuff that people are mistakenly thinking are UFOs, but they're not UFOs. Actually, stuff that the American U.S. Navy and other things, other elements, have developed as craft. So that's in the works.
Very
Nice.
cool.
I like that.
Yeah,
Watch for that.
looking forward to
Yeah.
that. So, Eric, what about you? Where do you like people interacting with you?
Well, I'm on. Well, I was on Facebook, but now I'm apparently banned. So now I'm just on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. I think it's Eric McElroy #6, and then it's just regular Eric McElroy on Twitter, I believe. So
Eric, how did you get banned from Facebook? How do you get?
that is a good question, because they sent me a thing that says we're going to put you in jail for 30 days, and if you disagree, hit this button. And I hit the button, and then bam, never got it back.
Okay.
I don't know why. Just,
Friggin' Pokemon.
That's why they booted me off. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's
A Pokemon thing. Are you in Pokemon jail or something?
Yeah.
Yep,
Well,
yeah.
I think I was toying with the Digimon, and they felt betrayed. So
I know we don't have time for it, but Eric, next time you're on, remind me to tell you I have a story about Pokemon, Yakuza, and FBI. So I'll
Wow.
see you next time. Yeah.
Makes total sense to me.
yeah, I'm gonna bring my tarot cards. So
Jar Jar.
Hey, splash pages on Tuesday night here on the Dorkening, and Leo, since Mr. Ryan there's starting a podcast, he might need a network to get his podcast out to all the streaming services. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
We can talk.
Oh yeah.
Hint,
Would
hint,
love to
wink,
talk
wink.
about that.
Nod, nod, huh? Budge, nudge. And then maybe I get to meet Mr. Ryan one day, and then we get to talk about black sails. And
there you go. Yeah.
see, it comes back to me at some point. Don't worry about it.
Benjamin, take us out.
So stilltoking.com is where you can go to find out everything about what we do, where we are, what we're doing, comic book, the novel, the product line that we're going to be launching real soon. Oh yeah. There's all kinds of stuff coming. But to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do so people like us can do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We're out of here.
Awesome. We'll catch you later. Mark, stay on for 1 minute till the end. Hold on. Crap it. I hit the wrong button. What the hell?
It's usually at the beginning of the show, not the end.
Yeah, here we go.